Hello, I am Liz Hara. I am a puppet builder, puppeteer, and I write television for little kids, big kids, and even bigger kids.
I love that. You were just two kids, two big kids chatting about our stories and education and, also global citizenship. Thank you so much, Liz, for joining me on the podcast. I'm very excited to learn more about puppets and the work that you do. I find that so exciting. The story just kind of just suddenly shot into my memory of like accidentally like hurting myself when I was a kid and I had to get
Uh,
stitches and then the doctor gave me a puppet. Like I thought that was so awesome because I was like,
yeah.
what? What kind of puppet just has, I mean, what kind of doctor has tons of puppets to just hand out? So I felt very privileged and it has stayed with me. So I feel like puppets really bring out a lot of one's imagination or creativity. And for someone like yourself who works with puppets, builds them, manipulates them, exactly like for television as well as in person, I think that's really exciting. And I haven't had a puppeteer on my podcast, so thank you.
Very excited to be here, and I will do my best to represent all puppeteers everywhere.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So, um, as I ask this, to all my guests, it's really to kind of, set the scene of like, who is Liz by sharing a little bit of your work, your journey in this career with puppets. So maybe if you can kind of speak to where where were like the initial seeds planted in your life to take interest in puppets, maybe some of the different milestones as well in terms of like opportunities to explore that interest or other skills that are kind of tangential that have like allowed you to get into the spaces that you are now working in.
I grew up in Minnesota, which actually is a pretty big theater town. And so I grew up, my folks were great about always bringing me to see live stage shows. Got very involved in theater in high school and was interning in during my junior and senior year at a theater in Minneapolis, Theater de la Jeune Lune, and a puppet production came through called Shock-Headed Peter. And it was by this incredible British company called the Improbable Theater. And it was this really bizarre show. I talk about it all the time. It was all these German fairy tales or nursery rhymes in which the kid dies at the end of every story, pretty much. Like there's one where a kid is sucking his thumb and his mother's like, if you don't stop sucking your thumb, the tailor's going to come and cut your thumbs off. And the tailor, in fact, comes and cuts this little puppet's thumbs off, and they pull out these red ribbons, and the little puppet bleeds to death on stage, and everybody laughs and has an amazing time. And I guess, sick person that I am, I was like, that's magic. Because you could never do something like that on stage and have everybody so on board if not for puppets. Um, and like I was already interested in building things and props, but puppets I just thought were so magical because really for a puppet to exist at all, it requires the audience to buy in. Like they have to engage, they have to agree to play with you if this puppet is going to exist in the world. Um, so when I went to school, about 2 hours north of New York, um, I got to intern at the Jim Henson Company and got to build puppets for the Broadway production of Little Shop of Horrors. The designer for that was Marty Robinson, who was the original Audrey 2 when Little Shop opened off Broadway. And he is also Mr. Snuffleupagus. And he has kind of been my mentor and puppet dad for years and years. So from that, I got involved in the O'Neill's National Puppetry Conference at the O'Neill Theater Center, and met just a ton of working puppet professionals who have really become my family since then. So from that, I was kind of brought into the puppet community, and more specifically, the Sesame Street family. So I got to, let's see, when did I actually start working at Sesame in earnest? After college, moved to New York from Minnesota, and was working at the Henson Company on Sesame Street. I got to wrangle for a couple years, and the puppet wrangler is kind of the art department for the puppet department. Like, we dress the puppets, we rig the puppets, we take care of the puppeteers. So I got to be on set every day, and that was just truly one of like the best, most perfect times in my life. And became good friends with the head writer at the time, Joey Mazzarino, who was also a director for Sesame and a puppeteer. And told him that I wanted to be a writer, and he took a look at my stuff and got me my first intro segment, and got to start writing for Sesame Street then. So I've been a writer for Sesame since, I think, season 47. So coming up on 10 years now, which is crazy to think about. And then also from that, I've been writing for a lot of other children's television, including Carl the Collector, which is a new PBS series. And then also, gosh, lots of really fun freelance things. Don Quixote, which is another social emotional learning puppet show through Spiffy Pictures and the Fred Rogers Company. And then also writing now for Disney. Just finished up on Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and working on a new show. So a pretty big combination of curriculum-based television and just really fun stuff.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm just so excited and how many projects have just really kind of blossomed, right? In this period where you were able to like really cultivate your interest for puppets and sustain this magic, right? That they produce, and to be able to share that with so many people, especially in the medium of, like TV, just how that is able to be shared, via streaming services or wherever they get them, to so many people around the world. And definitely with, a show like Sesame Street, I mean, that's the one that is most iconic for me, but for others, maybe they gravitate towards other honorable mentions that you put out there. But yeah, that's so amazing, and it just makes me think back to that first puppet show by this British company, and it makes me think maybe this was not so improbable, right? Well, maybe this was meant to be. There's something there. So, the question, I kind of want to bring this back to your roots over in Minnesota. You said that your parents did such a wonderful job instilling this love, maybe say love, of theater, of performance, of art, right? All of that. Could you share a little bit about the influence that your parents had on you in that, in that interest, or in other important ways?
My parents are true miracles. Like, I'm obsessed with them, probably in a weird way. But they were always very supportive. And growing up, we went to theater as a family all the time, and they had season tickets to the Children's Theater Company in Minneapolis, which is a phenomenal institution. I've worked there. Like I also interned there in high school as a prop builder. Um, and the quality of their shows is just so incredible. They did a production of the 5,000 hats or 500 hats of Bartholomew Cubbins. I forget how many hats, but they did a style that I now know is called check black puppetry. So they were able to make these hats just appear out of nowhere on this kid's head. Like he would take one off and another would just be sitting there. And the stagecraft of it just completely blew my mind. Um, so, and my parents, again, just, they also love live theater, and uh, we would go to the symphony and the opera, even at a fairly young age. So they always were very encouraging of that. Uh, so even when I was in college, I actually interned during the summers at the Attorney General's office in Minnesota, because for several years I thought I was going to be a lawyer like my dad. And then during the school year at Henson, and my dad was just like, Liz, you don't want to be a lawyer. The world has enough lawyers. Find something else. And I was like, okay, but just so you know, the other option is puppetry.
Maybe you
And
could be like you can do a puppet that is a lawyer. Get the best of both worlds. Be like, see, I became a lawyer, but a lawyer puppet, maybe.
a tiny, tiny, fuzzy lawyer.
A little, and he can have his own little gavel. I mean, I know that's like more of a judge, but just thinking of the law, just yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. I just
No,
want to
no.
put that out into the universe of a lawyer puppet.
Mm. I will make it happen.
Yes, please do. I will watch it.
But yeah, like they've always kind of been thrilled, if not a little baffled by this journey. And my brother also very supportive, uh and also like they were able to financially help me pay for college. So that enabled me to take these internships. So definitely they set me up for success in every way possible.
Amazing. Well, if your parents are listening, big shout out to them.
Yep.
Um, and it's just incredible how, one's passion for theater, the impact that can have on one's children, right? Those around, and to see that, just with like the right kind of like nudges, right? Encouragement can
Yep.
really take you all around the world. I mean, I from our past conversations, I find that you're in a different state like every other week, and then somewhere international, and then
Yeah,
back and forth, just kind of like a pinball machine between New York and LA,
very much.
which is an exciting life to lead. And to say that you're doing that all because of puppets, some people may not believe you. Like, really, puppets? Like the one I got at my doctor's office when I was like 6 years old? I don't know. But I think there's something so beautiful in the way that you talked about the magic of puppets that I would love for you to kind of gush a little bit more about, since I know you can probably do it so well. And you said that one of the things that makes it magical is the buy-in
Mhm.
for the audience to really believe that. And you use the word to play. So, in the adult world, I don't think there is any consensus on what play actually means. And
Mm.
oftentimes the reference of play as it, relates to children, or the kind of more like aloof, maybe more silly and whimsical side of play, is sidelined or rejected very harshly by adults, right? No, no, this is for children, right? but not for me. So could you like maybe speak a little bit more about what you mean by play within the context of puppets and why that's so magical and why that's needed?
I believe so firmly in the power of play, and I have uh, done speeches where I talk about how important it is and how we can reframe failure as play. Albert Einstein once said that play is the highest form of research, and children play all the time, and that is actually how they learn. Like they test their limits and basically explore the world. And when you reframe things as playing and that experimentation phase as play, you take the stakes out of it. Like you get to just try things without anything being labeled a mistake. So I think that really helps build resiliency and joy, which is, I think, what is so great about puppets is like they are, even though there are so many heartbreaking, tragic puppet shows, there is still an element of joy in the performance. And that's, joy of connecting with your audience and joy as a performer of being in your body. There's just so much beautiful to it. Uh, and so I really think that everybody should approach every aspect of life as play. And all the puppeteers that I know have aged beautifully. Like there's not a single puppeteer when you find out how old they actually are where you're not surprised, because they all still have that wonderful childlike exuberance. Um, Even though we have health insurance and credit cards and grown-up responsibilities, uh, you can just see that we've spent our lives having fun. And one of my favorite things in the world of puppetry, and I don't think it's specific to Sesame Street, but when you are offered an opportunity to come and perform, they'll usually say, "Do you want to come play?" instead of, "Do you want to come work?" Because it is play. Like you're hanging out with your best friends. You're waving dolls in the air. It's inherently silly. Even though the work we do is, I think, so meaningful to the world, uh, both curriculum wise and just art wise. Um, but it also is just light and joyful and perfect.
Well, I'm sold. I need to find myself a puppet or make one. And I like how you said that, all of these puppeteers, including yourself, it's to spend one's life having fun. And
Mhm.
sometimes the adult world is kind of depicted as gray or dreary or just heavy,
Yeah.
like you don't think about joy and fun and play, right? Like all these like words that come up. It's something that, yeah, I think is very, very much needed. And I'm happy to hear like not only what you're saying about it, about like the importance of play, as a way to reframe what, like just to try things, right? To
Mhm.
not be heavy with like the mistakes. So I think that's really important. And you said that like everyone seems so youthful,
Yeah.
colleagues, and I think youth is very much a state of mind,
Mm.
and it just affects every aspect of our lives. And I think, yeah, that what a privilege, and what an exciting opportunity that you get to have, and you get to share. So, this next question that I have, yeah, the next question I want to ask is about like mentors.
Mm.
Yeah. You mentioned that and also quick aside, I feel like you've done so many internships. Like just oh yeah, when I was like in high school, when I was in college, and then after that, and
Yep.
like all these different internships. Like that's amazing. You know, just to get yourself out there, get exposure, try different things. So kudos to you. But yeah, you mentioned that you did an internship for, is it Jim Henson? Is that right?
Yep.
And then that kind of like led you to then meet the person who voiced
Yep.
Mr. Was it Snuffleupagus?
Mr. Snuffleupagus.
Mr. Snuffleupagus. I was like worried I was going to trip over my tongue. I was like Snuffleupagus. Okay. So yeah, can you speak a little bit about yeah, this particular mentor and puppet dad
Yep.
and how they guided you and you know, yeah, just all that.
Uh, and also it's funny that you bring up the pronunciation because he texted me yesterday to yell at me for misspelling Snuffleupagus in my latest script. I was like, my man, I misspell it in a different wrong way in every script I write. But what is interesting about puppetry is it really is all institutional knowledge. There are very few programs where you can actually just go and study puppetry. So the mentor format really is how you learn. And I have had so many meaningful mentors throughout my career. So Martin P. Robinson is definitely one of the most significant, really has brought me up both as a performer and a writer and a human because he's known me since I was 19. And there is also Pam Arciero, who is another Sesame puppeteer who has taken me under her wing. And she is the artistic director for the National Puppetry Conference at the O'Neill. So I consider her my puppet mom. And the two of them, Marty is also the puppeteer for Telemonster on Sesame Street, and Pam is his usual right hand. She's also Grungetta, who is Oscar the Grouch's girlfriend. Um, a phenomenal character. And these two people, in addition to the community as a whole, really have just embraced me and encouraged me. Um, and Joey Mazzarino, the head writer of Sesame at the time, was another writing mentor. And like, not only does that make you feel connected to the community, but also specifically to the legacy of Sesame Street, which is very important. And it's also really showed me how I want to exist in the world. And I am now coming to the point in my career where I feel like I can be a true mentor, even though I feel like I've been forcing my mentorship on younger people, like for a very long time, whether they want it or not, whether I had anything helpful to say or not. Like, if you're younger than me, you're getting life advice from Grandpa Liz. Um,
I'll take
so,
some too.
so now it's nice to actually have some authority where I'm like, okay, this stuff I'm saying isn't total BS. Great. Um, so yeah, I just think that's another thing that really attracted me to puppetry is that it does not exist outside of a community. It's almost impossible to be a singular puppeteer. Um, so that's just more to add to the magic.
Yeah, I love that. Does not, yeah, you can't be in isolation. The words community, being a, well, it's not really a word, but I mean, being a good human being, I think also it's wonderful how, you know, you're attracted to those who are really excelling and are just loving the work they do. And then for you to, you know, get some of that and then realize now you're kind of blazing your own path forward to then be a mentor figure or someone else. And that's just, you know, the passage of time that's inescapable that we will all, you know, hopefully at some point be able to repay a certain debt of gratitude that we have because, you know, again, from all the internships, from all the peoples, and then the community that's raised you. And I mean, it's just clear that It's just been a very nurturing environment.
Mm, yeah.
And that's wonderful. We need more nurturing environments, just not only with puppetry, but like across all sectors of society. So it's just wonderful to hear that you've really been able to yeah, find your puppet mom and dad,
Yep.
and all your puppet friends, and you just say puppet for all the whole communities. And
And I do want to call out in regards to the internships, like what a financial privilege that is.
mm,
Um, because like I didn't have to pay for college. I was able to take a lot of different internships and I didn't have to work during my summers in school. So like that really set me ahead. Um, so one of the things also in addition to trying to be a good mentor to people is also trying to financially sponsor the same kind of opportunity for people coming up now.
amazing. That sounds wonderful. And you're just paying it forward, right?
Yep.
So, speaking about these wonderful mentor figures who have become wonderful and friends, really, I know that the relationship between a puppet and the puppeteer is also very intimate. And I recall you mentioning that one character in particular in Sesame Street holds a special place in your heart. And, well, yes, Mr. Snuffleupagus is there. But I think you said something about Grover.
Grover's just my favorite. Like,
Yeah. Could you speak a little bit about that character? Because I think that would say a lot about you as well. Just kind of like why Grover?
uh, he just has a cute butt and silly arms. He's perfect. He is his design is amazing. So there's just something in my lizard brain that wants to hug him all the time. Um, like he looks like the embodiment of play. Like those noodle arms are just the stupidest. And he has full confidence in everything he does, even though he's bad at most things he does. Uh, and he's perfect. He's so silly.
No, that's great. I think again it just speaks to like the fact that the personality of a puppet can also be something that's, reflecting back on your own kind of sense of like, who am I? What do I
Mm,
value? And, clearly you really like silly things
yep.
that make you laugh, and that you're okay with the kind of like, at times maybe absurdity of like the comments that he'll make and just being like, just say it. I want to
Yep.
hear what you have to say. Just go. And okay, I'm gonna say something, and it's gonna be a little bit cringe, but I've been so excited to say this joke to you about Grover. But I wanted to ask, what do you think is the kind of car that Grover would drive?
I don't know what kind of car would Grover drive.
I was thinking a Land Grover. Can you just imagine his big wobbly arms just on the steering wheel? So, along with the lawyer puppet, the Land Grover is just
Yep.
another one of the free ideas I'm just going to throw out there in the universe and
Great.
expect that you'll be manifesting at some point. Um, Great. Well, so now I kind of wanted to pivot in, all of this wonderful, talk about puppets. The why of like, puppets is clearly rooted in play.
Mhm.
Um, and I, yeah, and I wanted to ask like, how would you respond to the topic, of global citizenship, as it relates specifically to the maybe the relationship side of like puppets and then the audience as well? Like, do you see any connections there? I'm just curious to hear your thoughts as a puppeteer.
I think that puppets are one of the best tools for education. Uh, both in terms of like hard curriculum, like letters and numbers, but also so much in social emotional well-being, and also dealing with trauma. I've worked with an organization called No Strings, and they do work throughout the world, as does Sesame. But No Strings does a lot of work where they produce videos that are dealing with, let's see, they did one helping kids deal with the trauma of the aftermath of the earthquake in Haiti. Um, and there was one of the first projects I worked on, which was at the O'Neill Theater Center, was teaching landmine safety to children in Afghanistan using a kind of Pinocchio story metaphor. Um, and there have also been a lot of shows that reach out to children with autism, because children on the spectrum respond really well to puppets, because it is very clear, like you have to be so specific about what the facial emotions are, and it's also not as direct and threatening, I think. um so there's just so many incredible uses for puppetry, because they are avatars, they're safe, they're soft, and you can relate to them in a different way, uh, and they can say things that are not as safe feeling, which I'm sure is why your doctor had puppets in his office. It gives adults a really safe way to engage with children, that is beautiful for all the reasons I've said. So you can really use it as an incredible tool, and we're doing that uh, with race, especially now, and on Sesame. So we're really excited about all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I find that to be amazing, and I'm just kind of now starting to rack my brain about how, like, what kind of puppets would I use for like global citizenship education? Or maybe it's maybe in relation to other important themes
Mhm.
to have them kind of play out in a very ordinary sense
Mhm.
or local sense to indicate the more global side. Because the examples that you shared are specific to, dealing with trauma, about the socio-emotional well-being of the child, or a particular event that's happened, or a particular scenario, maybe, race-based, that is very painful, and you're able to capture that. So, now I'm thinking, yeah, how can we do that to instill a belief in people about this idea of global citizenship? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, when you hear the word global citizen or global citizenship, what does that conjure up for you in terms of the kind of like qualities or aspects or skills, whatever? How would you articulate that?
Um, I think I should have listened to more episodes so that I could have just stolen everybody
Oh,
else's
that's
answer.
okay. Yeah, no, it's honestly, you could just say, I have no idea. I mean, that's fine. But I mean, maybe like in real time, just kind of like what things just kind of come out.
I think being a global citizen is just being aware of how your actions impact everyone around you. Um, and even though it's, global, like there is the international aspect of that, but also just, I think, being aware, even just how your actions affect your community, and um kind of figuring out like what are the small things you can do within your sphere that make a difference. And I think those small actions that we all do really can ripple through the world and have a global impact, even when we are acting locally. I'm extremely privileged in that I get to work for Sesame Street, which truly has a global impact. Like, we have productions all over the world, and very intentionally work globally and think that way. But I think even on a smaller scale, just the small projects make a big difference. And when you make good changes in your corner, I think that can inspire other people to do the same.
I 100% agree with you. I like that, you frame it around this awareness that we have and the expansion of our sphere of influence, and that, regardless of where that sphere is, it's making a difference by simply the fact that it's expanding, right? It's expanding outward in some, you know, rate, and that's good, and it's community oriented. One of the things that I was thinking about as you specifically mentioned Sesame Street and how they, well, originally they started off just it's in New York, right? They
Yep.
had their kind of broadcasting. They had probably a very small team, and no one knew about them. And they're just like, we got these puppets. Boom, we're gonna do something about it. And I mean, I'm sure there's more to the story. I'm not too familiar, but now, all, in different parts of the world, they have these productions. And what got me thinking was this not module, this course that we took at the beginning of our grad program on how people learn. And they just started up right away with this collaboration, really, between Sesame Street and various other stakeholders, organizations operating in Afghanistan.
That one was Syria.
Syria.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and just to be able to see how they remained true
Mhm.
to the work that they do for children, and yet here they were in
Yep.
another country and not dictating this is everything you need to do, and we're going to be making the costumes. But there was this cultural sensitivity that was very refreshing, and the open-mindedness of it all. And so I'm curious in the work, because I think you mentioned about like another organization with no strings, but um like within Sesame Street, like is there anything more that you can say to like that process of like the international aspect, but while still being very local or like value based?
The international stuff is so exciting. And frankly, I would love to work more with that department. Whenever there is a co-production, it is a true co-production. It's not Sesame goes and like, here are your puppeteers, here are your stories. We send our writers and our puppeteers over to train people from that community. Marty Robinson actually is particularly involved with training puppeteers throughout the world. And also, when we do puppet designs for these productions, we work to include that culture's mythology and work very hard to understand their culture and their priorities, so that it's not just, you know, us being colonizers, basically, uh, working very hard, um, to make sure that the children in that community see themselves and their culture reflected, which is part of our ethos in the American version as well. And so very proud of all our work. And some of the characters that are in the international productions are just wild. And like, they all have kind of a big bird character that's like a huge walk around. The one in, I think, Russia is Zeli Boba, and is just like this huge blue, kind of feathery, hairy, monster looking thing, that is currently mounted in the workshop in New York. And he's a hard one to not just hug as soon as you walk in. And Plaza Sesamo has Big Bird's green canary cousin, uh, Abelardo, I believe is his name. So yeah, it's just really fun to see the diversity that exists within the Sesame world.
Yeah, so much diversity abounds, and the fact that you were saying that when they work internationally, it's truly a co-production. I find that to be so like no matter how big Sesame Street gets, right? There's this kind of like humbling approach like through this co-production from what I hear that is that allows them to create something that everyone is proud of
Mhm.
and that everyone can identify with. And I
Mhm.
think that's some, truly original stuff
Mhm.
to build upon. So that's great. Thank you so much. One more thing. So there's two, but one thing in relation to the, puppets at Sesame Street, I I remember sitting at the table with you and learning about the fact that you work at Sesame Street, and I was like wow, I feel like I'm sitting at like a t celebrity's table or something. And then you mentioned that you also like did the voice for one of the characters, right? Lily, I believe.
Yep.
And
Lily
so
the Tiger.
yeah, so could you like just briefly mention who is Lily? And then if you could do like if you could, share with us what does Lily sound like? Just something that Lily would say if she was being on a podcast, that would be great.
So Lily the Tiger is actually one of the characters from a co-production. She was introduced on the Chinese production of Sesame Street. She is a very cute, enthusiastic little tiger. And she did an episode this upcoming season, um, where she talks about Lunar New Year. And we also have our Korean American character, Ji Young, and some human kids also talking about their different celebrations of Lunar New Year, because Asians are different and we celebrate in different ways. And so I was talking about, oh, these traditions are similar, these are separate. But the important thing is we all celebrate with family and friends. So I got to be the American version of Lily. We couldn't fly the puppeteer out, although we have done that in the past where we've had international characters and gotten the original puppeteers in. Um, so I am Lily the Tiger, and she's got kind of a little growly voice, which is very fun to do. Um, and yeah, she sounds tiger-like. Um, my Chinese pronunciation is largely terrible, so I had to re-record a bunch of lines with a lot of help. So I'm still working on getting better at that. Um, but it was just such a special day and so much fun puppeteering with everybody. And the puppet is just the most beautiful little puppet with a little Chinese character on her forehead. So yeah, it was just such a magical experience.
Thank you so much for sharing about that magical experience. And it's just so cool that you would be able to like have that opportunity and that you take it so seriously, right? With the same kind of like you know, conviction that like, wow, this is gonna touch the lives of so many people who are able to identify with this this character, this culture, the ways in which they uphold their traditions, and even something like, getting the pronunciation of these words in Chinese,
Mhm.
get it really right. That's I think really admirable and important, right? So thank you for sharing. Lily slash Liz. I feel like both of your names are also quite similar. Liz.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see there. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much. Like I feel like we could, continue this conversation for much longer, but unfortunately we're coming to the end. And I wanted to ask a question relating to book or movie references. So is
Mm.
there anything that comes to mind that you'd like to recommend to the listeners that, you know, connects to our conversation around global citizenship in any way?
Mm, let's see. What was the book that I recommended to you? Basically, I love stuff by Adam Grant,
Hidden potential.
Hidden Potential. I would recommend actually a lot of his books. He has one on creativity called Flow. And then there's another one where he basically makes the argument that, like, even just mathematically speaking, it's better to be a good person than a selfish, crappy person. And I was like, I knew it. It is better to be nice. That's all I want the world to know. So recommend that very highly. What is that called? Give and Take, maybe something like that. Um, and also there are some great books about the history of Sesame Street. Street Gang is a pretty comprehensive history. And there is a documentary, I think it already has come out. Um, and also, my favorite thing on Sesame Street right now that I will recommend to people is the monster foodie trucks, where Cookie Monster and another new British puppet, Gonger, uh, have a food truck, and they are hilarious. So please enjoy.
Oh, wow. I want to see that. Where would you find that, the Monster Foodie Truck?
Those are on as segments within the show, but you can just look them up on YouTube.
Hmm. Okay. Definitely look out for that. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Liz. This has just been such an incredible, like, just glimpse into the magical world of puppetry, and for you to also share out like why it's been so meaningful for you and your journey as a performer, as an educator, as a writer, as a puppeteer, and as a good human being, right? Because scientifically it just makes sense.
It just makes sense.
It
That's
just
it's
makes sense. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Well,
And
thank
I
you
don't
so
knowing
much
like,
for having me. Like this. I love talking about this. I could talk about it forever. And always a joy to talk to you, sir.
wow, thank you so much. Yeah, I was actually going to give you the last words, but if if there's anything more that you'd like to share, or just kind of like a send off, I wanted to give the last words to you.
I will just encourage everybody to go out there and play.